Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari calls for an investigation into the country's stunning election delay. Senegalese President Macky Sall faces off against 4 opponents this weekend. And a Pan-African festival connects the African diaspora through the arts. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Many Nigerian voters are confused and puzzled on Monday following the shocking one-week postponement of last Saturday's presidential and parliamentary elections by the nation's independent National Electoral Commission. The highly anticipated poll is now set to take place this coming Saturday on February the 23rd. Nigeria's Election Commission postponed the vote just hours before the polls were to open. The chairman of INEC, Mahmoud Yakubu, says postponing the election was a difficult but necessary decision to take to ensure the execution of a successful ballot.
Following a careful review of the implementation of its logistics and operational plan and the determination to conduct free, fair and credible elections, the Commission came to the conclusion that proceeding with the election as scheduled is no longer feasible.
The People's Democratic Party leader Atiku Abubakar addressed the media Saturday at his home in Yola, the capital city of Adamawa State, before leaving for an urgent meeting in Abuja.
Honestly, you don't postpone an election on the day of the election. If you want to postpone the election, then you can do so 1 week beforehand. But you don't just postpone a few hours before.
Well, the Situation Room, a civic group monitoring the election, says the delay casts a cloud of doubt on INEC's credibility. Voters say they are bewildered and disappointed by the week-long suspension, especially after the Electoral Commission has said everything was running smoothly leading up to the election. As President Muhammadu Buhari calls for calm, he is also accusing Nigeria's Electoral Commission of incompetence of its organization of the national election. President Buhari also warned that anyone attempting to tamper with the election will be dealt with firmly. Meanwhile, the main opposition party is hitting the campaign trail once again after the one-week election postponement. Standing by live in Abuja with more on the election is journalist Awa Umar. Good evening, Awa.
Good evening.
Yes, now everybody is, of course, stunned by this decision. Can you talk to us a little bit about the reaction from President Muhammadu Buhari himself and the opposition Atiku Abubakar's camp?
Well, talking about the election postponement, nobody sees this coming. Nigerians didn't see this coming, and even the APC or PDP. So both parties are pointing fingers at each other, and there are a lot of reactions on social media from both parties and from supporters. Supporters were saying APC that postponed the elections because of their own personal interest, and likewise the PDP supporters. So, and then earlier today there was a meeting with President Muhammadu Buhari, APC meeting, which he says that even after the elections, they will set a committee to investigate why the postponement. So, you know, this is to show that even President Muhammadu Buhari didn't expect this.
Now, it looks like INEC caught everybody off guard, but the question is, what are the reasons they're giving, and when did they realize that those reasons are so compelling that they actually have to postpone those elections?
Well, the commission spelled out its reasons, and one of them was logistics. The commission was not able to dispatch materials to places due to bad weather, which is the main reason why they postponed the elections. And then coming to them, the commission itself, we didn't know, and them too, they didn't know that the election is going to be postponed, not until their meeting, their emergency meeting after 10 in the middle of the night. That was when people start to suspect that the election will be postponed.
Mm-hmm. Now, we have also heard that while the president is calling for an investigation at the end of that election on now next week on the 23rd, he's also threatening that anybody who tampers with this electoral process will be dealt with even by the military. How are people reacting to this? What does this mean?
Well, yes, people are reacting to that, and then people support that because the Nigerians and the governments want a free, fair elections. So everybody is in support of that.
Yeah, but what prompted this? Why did the president have to add this onto that call for investigation, the threat that anybody who tampers? Is there fear and concern that the elections could be interfered with?
Well, we don't really know that from the commission or from the government. We don't really know that. But since the government is trying to act to that, I think maybe there is something the government has sensed. That is why the government is taking that action.
Well, tell us a little bit about what this meant to the people of Nigeria. Very few hours before the election, so much happens just before then. To what extent has this disrupted people's lives and kind of messed up with their schedules?
Well, looking at it, there is a lot of financial implication, even for the government, because most of our borders were closed, our airports were closed, and then the railway stations too were closed. And then people were really prepared for these elections. A lot of people had to have traveled to their various places to cast their ballot. So you see, there is a lot of financial implications.
Do people feel confident that actually this election will even take place now that they had to experience this shocking postponement?
Well, the country is facing or confronting the challenge, and with the hope that INEC will use the postponement period as time to prepare more, to be more prepared. So we are facing the challenge.
Okay, in terms of the opposition did mention that they will go back to the campaign trail. So do Nigerians expect now again to see rallies, campaign rallies in the next few days before Saturday?
Yes, because they need to go back and talk to their people to come out and vote, you know, because going by the Electoral Act, Section 99, subsection 1, that says campaign rallies will start 90 days to elections and stop 24 hours to elections. So campaign rallies will also continue. And then I think they need to go back and call their people, tell their people to come out and vote.
Very, very, very quickly, any word on so what happens to the officials who might have been sent to different parts of the country ready for Saturday, now that it has to be another time?
Yes, a lot of people were arguing that they will not come back from their various places, while a lot of people that go back to their various places of work will not be able to cast their ballots, and that is really, really bad.
Well, 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 it's such a bizarre kind of development in Nigeria. We want to thank you very much for your excellent reporting. Should I say Yawa? And have a good evening. And that is our Umma reporting from Abuja live. Now, not too far from there, Senegal, a country regarded as the most stable democracy in West Africa, is preparing for an election on Sunday, with President Macky Sall facing off against 4 other candidates. Sall is widely expected to win a second term after the country's 2 best-known opposition figures were barred from running because of corruption allegations, in moves critics say represents a concerning crackdown on dissent. Sall's challengers are Idriss Seck, 60, who served as prime minister in the 2000s, and the 45-year-old Ousmane Sonko, a newcomer to the political scene. Also running is 63-year-old Professor Issa Sall of the Party of Unity and Assembly. His party is affiliated with the Moustachidine religious movement, part of a leading Sufi brotherhood in Senegal. Seen as having the least chance of winning the presidency is Madické Niang, 66, a loyal supporter of former President Abdoulaye Wade, and served as a minister in his government for many, many years. Well, as Sunday's Senegalese election gets closer, we are bringing you a series of profiles of women and men of all ages and all walks of life in Senegal. They're talking about what they hope for their country and what they expect from the general elections. Today, in the We Are Senegalese series, let's hear from Aminata Kebe.
For me, to be Senegalese, it is to have a Senegalese nationality, to have grown in Senegal, to have studied in Senegal, Senghor and Mamadou Diaz's Senegal, the Senegal of Cheikh Hamadou Bamba or Cheikh Anta Diop, and above all, to be a patriot and have inherited the Senegalese land. Senegalese people face many problems in many sectors: education, health, infrastructure, and particularly education and health. When it comes to education, students always have housing problems, scholarship problems, learning problems. Healthcare is also a problem. Even though we have the universal health coverage, it is not for all Senegalese. For example, only children from 0 to 5 years can benefit that coverage. But what about the rest of Senegal? In my opinion, we are the first responsible for our own problems in Senegal. We must respect the infrastructure, the environment, but government is the other big responsible. There are other areas that are left stranded. We must insist on it because that is part of the development of Senegal. As I said already, we must not forget education and health. In my opinion, to preserve peace in Senegal, we first need understanding, mutual aid, solidarity, and respect for the hierarchy. Above all, we must preserve everyone's dignity. We cannot be Senegalese if we do not love our brothers and sisters. You cannot be Senegalese if the safety of your brothers and sisters do not matter. We cannot have peace in Senegal if we are not accountable. It is abnormal that there are no female candidates in the presidential election. We are a country of democracy. It is a country of parity. There should have been a female candidate for the presidential election. We tend to underestimate female skills, whereas there are important contributors. If I were president, the first decision I would take is to put Senegalese first, promote Senegalese entrepreneurship. That is to say, all our projects that we give to the West, we should give them to Senegalese because we need this work. Senegalese also need internship and other opportunities. If we give more projects to young people, it will benefit and promote the development of our country. They will be able to have a job and therefore reduce poverty in Senegal.
Well, to the south of the continent now, Zimbabwe's former finance minister and senior opposition politician Tendai Biti was convicted Monday for unlawfully and falsely announcing the results of last year's presidential election that was won by Emerson Mnangagwa. He He was also fined $200. Biti, vice chairman of the main opposition Movement for Democratic Change Party, was charged last year after announcing that MDC leader Nelson Chamisa had won the presidential election. Biti was later deported by Zambian authorities after a failed asylum bid. The MDC and Chamisa continued to dispute Mnangagwa's victory, which was also upheld by the country's top court, and says Zimbabwe's political and economic problems will not be fixed until the president's legitimacy is resolved. Magistrate Gloria Tokundwa says state prosecutors approved their case against Biti, whom she says will be jailed for 6 months if he commits a similar offense in the next 5 years. Biti is expected to appeal the conviction and sentence. A Sudanese fruit vendor has died in Khartoum from inhaling tear gas fired at protesters. Medics and the vendor's family say the 62-year-old resident of Bahari, a northern suburb of the Sudanese capital, died Sunday in the hospital after choking on tear gas. The tear gas was fired at scores of protesters after they took to the streets. Protests in Sudan began on December 19th when the government massively increased the price of bread. Since then, demonstrations and subsequent violent clashes between protesters and riot police have continued and ballooned into wider calls for longtime President Omar al-Bashir to step down. The government says 31 people have died in protests-related violence since December, but international watchdog Human Rights Watch puts the death toll at 51. Sudan is slated to hold presidential elections in 2020, and Bashir is considering running for a third elected term. Bashir has ruled the country since 1993, when he declared himself president after a coup. The prolonged civil unrest in Somalia has taken the lives of many parents whose children are now left fending for themselves. Many lives live on the streets of Mogadishu, vulnerable to violence, drugs, crime, and exploitation. Mohammed Sheikh Noor reports on the street children of Mogadishu who spent their days sniffing glue to escape a grim life.
13-year-old Hussein Ahmed and 14-year-old Usman Daoud are among Mogadishu's street children. They spend their days sniffing glue. They say to escape a life of misery and loss. Both lost their parents in suicide bombings and have no other family to turn to.
I lost both my parents. I had to resort to becoming a drug sniffer and join the street children. We eat leftovers from restaurants, but we know we need everyone's help in order to kick this habit of using drugs.
The young teens scavenge garbage heaps for anything that is edible in this war-torn city. When they are lucky, they earn a little money, shining shoes, or washing cars. But in this desperate world, all the street children sometimes take what little money Ahmed and Daoud make. They say every moment is a struggle for survival.
I sometimes feel afraid to go to sleep so that I could avoid the nightmares. But then the following day I start venturing out to the streets only to return to the horrendous cycle of my street life.
Explosions and armed confrontations in a city that has been steeped in conflict for 30 years. Ahmed Dini, with the non-profit organization Somali Peace Line, says street children in particular face severe human rights violations.
The danger these children daily face or encounter include killing each other, rape, child labor, being used in the armed conflicts as child soldiers by extremists, and so on.
Dini says street children like these are largely invisible in the city's busy, overcrowded streets. Government officials say they are working to combat the problem by opening foster care centers in Mogadishu. Mohammed Abdi Ali is a senior child protection officer with the Ministry of Women and Human Rights.
As a government, we already have opened foster care centers run by the Banadir Regional Administration and another one initiated by the head of the Custodial Corps, General Bashir Gobe, and all this will help mitigate the plight of these children.
For now, thousands of children like Hussein and Usman remain on the streets, hoping to survive another day. Mohammed Sheikh Noor for VOA News, Mogadishu.
The U.S. Capitol has been plunged into a power struggle between the executive and legislative branches of government, one that America's third branch, the courts, ultimately may resolve. As viewers Michael Bowman reports, President Donald Trump's national emergency declaration aims to jumpstart wall construction along the U.S.-Mexico border, but Congress did not authorize.
A legitimate use of executive authority or an end run around Congress. President Donald Trump told the nation a crisis situation compels him to act.
So we're going to confront the national security crisis on our southern border because we have an invasion of drugs, invasion of gangs, invasion of people, and it's unacceptable.
Democrats are furious.
We're going to use every tool at our disposal to fight him on this unconstitutional power grab.
The president is trying to take the power of the purse away from the legislative branch. We are co-equal branches of government.
Some Republicans are expressing alarm as well. In a statement, Senator Tom Tillis said he does not believe a national emergency declaration is the solution and would create a new precedent a future Democratic president would undoubtedly utilize to implement their radical policy agenda while bypassing the authority of Congress.
He's putting the security of the American people ahead of partisan politics, and I fully respect that.
Some Republican lawmakers are applauding Trump's move.
Securing the American border, stopping the criminal aliens, the known people with known terrorist affiliations, the trafficking of children, and the criminal narcotics, the deadly narcotics that are coming across our porous border. If that's not a national security, I don't know what is.
Majorities are believed to exist in both houses of Congress to override the emergency declaration, but not Trump's expected veto of such a measure. Meanwhile, public policy groups are challenging Trump's action. The state of California is expected to follow suit.
This is not the 9/11 crisis that we faced back in 2001. It's not the Iran hostage crisis we faced in 1979.
Some legal scholars believe the White House's rationale for the emergency declaration will prove thin in court.
It is a fundamental component of our democracy that it is Congress and not the president that has the power of the purse, that decides what projects should be funded and what should not. And for the president to essentially say, I wasn't able to convince Congress to fund this project, and therefore I'm going to go around Congress, undermines the entire premise of a system of checks and balances.
Trump's allies are undeterred.
So, yeah, it's going to be a slow process. It's going to go to the courts. We understand that. But better to start that process so that we can ultimately get there than to not start it at all.
Last week, Congress approved a package of measures to boost U.S. border security, including a fraction of the funds the president demanded for border barriers in the form of fencing, not a wall. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
More than 170 films from around the world are being shown at the 27th Annual Pan-African Film and Arts Festival in California. The multi-day event aims to connect Africans and their counterparts from around the world. Viewers Elizabeth Lee reports from Los Angeles.
It is a festival that features the arts in all its different forms. But there is one common love that inspires all the artists.
I never think of us as African American. I think of us as Africans in America. And then coming from that perspective, the ancestral lineage of art in Africa is beyond belief.
But it's not just Black Americans who are here at the Pan-African Film and Arts Festival. Descendants of Africans from different parts of the globe are also showing off their artistry in fine art and film.
As a result of the slave trade and colonization, African people are spread all over the planet. So we get a chance through this festival to get a chance to know each other.
More than 170 Black films are being shown at the festival. Among them is a movie by actress and filmmaker Stephanie Linus.
Connecting all of us through film that is especially about us, and we can see a reflection of ourselves and tell our stories and get a better understanding about where I'm coming from.
Linus's film called Dry is about child marriage and the devastating effects of a practice that can be found around the world.
So I use a tool of filmmaking to bring attention to them, to get people to know about their problem, to get people to know the consequences that happen when you make those kind of decisions, and force them to have conversation about this. I'm happy that people are taking proactive action because we screened the movie in Gambia, and a month later the government banned child marriage in Gambia.
Promoting dialogue and education through film and the arts is a main goal of the festival.
So we know there's some profound things happening around the black world, and so this is a way to amplify that and make people pay attention.
And he adds, to create awareness among lawmakers of the social issues faced by Africans and people with African roots around the world. Elizabeth Lee, VOA News, Los Angeles.
Welcome back to Africa 54, and here's what's trending. Now, this is a place to come when you want to soothe your wounded heart with a few beverages and read all about the relationship mistakes other people have made. Breakup is a popular bar that lets people melt in their melancholy and bathe in their tears. But it's also about catering for people who want to have fun and forget the heartbreak. The bistro-style restaurant has been sold out since the day it opened, with people lining up to get in each night. The breakup bar features a wall of broken relationships covered with notes, texts, and conversations from an ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend. The cocktail list includes signature drinks called She Blinded Me with Science, Tears of My Ex, and Body Like a God, Brain Like a Brick. Next up, streetwear, boyfriend blazers, and pantsuits are not just fashion trends for adults these days, at least not for Chinese designer Kanye Ye, who created the brand. Kanye Jr. organized the first ever Kids Fashion Week Paris in the lead up to Paris Fashion Week later this month. The Hangzhou-based designer says she wants her brand to encourage children to develop a personal style. French brand Charbier, whose upmarket children's clothing are carried by stores like Bergdorf Goodman and the Bon Marché, is seeking to penetrate the $22 billion luxury market in China, which grew by 20% from 2017 to 2018. The market for high-quality children's apparel could also be driven by safety concerns in China, where scandals involving tainted formula milk and fake babies vaccine records have been rocked consumer confidence. And finally, an Ivorian woman has turned the natural hair trend into a political statement. 21-year-old Letitia Key uses her hair sculptures to add a voice to global discussions around feminism, pop culture, racism, and recently to draw attention to the Me Too campaign against sexual harassment. When she sculpted her hair into the image of a man lifting a woman's skirt, Letitia uses various props to give her hair that gravity-defying edge, from metal wires to hangers and pieces of African print fabric. Posting multiple series of finished works on social media has given her global reach, with over 800,000 followers on Instagram and more than 35,000 on Facebook. And that's what's trending, and that's our show. Have a good night.